Football is back, rounding third and on its way home. And that means you need the best of the best to discuss some of these conference team previews, win totals, and future plays. I'm very excited to welcome back ESPN's Chris Fallica and Wager Talk's Ralph Michaels to talk about this massive 2022 season. You can follow them on Twitter at Chris Fallica and Cal Sports LV. And this episode is being brought to you by Circa Sports. The biggest pro football overlays in Vegas are back with 12 million in guaranteed prizes only at Circa Sports. These contests have two ways to win and no rake. The Circa Sports Million has quarterly payouts and 100% payback. Play Circa Survivor and select one team each week with no point spread. Take in the big money with 12 million in guaranteed prizes. Enter in Vegas, play from anywhere. Visit circasports.com. Guys, thank you so much for coming back on the show. How is everyone's summers? Chris, you've been traveling to Europe again. What's up with that?
We are. I did travel to Europe. I had a great 3 weeks over there between a nice cruise between Israel, Greece, Greek islands, Turkey, Turkish islands, and it was fantastic. Other than not being able to lay off any of my liability on Liverpool to win the Champions League because I was on a boat in the middle of the Mediterranean and every website was blocked. So other than that, we were good. And by the way, yes, 4 entries, by the way, in Circa Survivor to give you a little shameless plug off of your Circa promo there.
Woohoo! 4 entries. Why don't you go full 6 at that point? Come on, man. You get some more outs.
well, here's the thing. I'm still trying to decide, and I'm sure I'll get yelled at by a lot of people for even thinking this, is, nearly everybody week 1 is going to have the Saints against the Falcons. And do I have an opportunity now with 4? Again, you never want to throw away 2 right off the bat, but do you go oppo on the Jaguars and Washington and you walk away knowing that you're going to have 2 entries moving forward with a team that you're probably not going to want to use again? So I got some things to think about with 4.
You sure do. That first week always gets people, man. And Survivor is an interesting thing because during Christmas and during Thanksgiving, you only get like 3 games those weeks. And that's what makes me want more outs. If I'm playing Circa Survivor, I want to max those out. But anyways, it's going to be fun. And the first week, some people even go with the Thursday game. And if they got the money, they rebuy if they lose that one, got to give themselves
if you're out there, you can do that. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, I don't want to ever start a Vegas vacation like that, though, man. Just that's a tough game right there. Rams versus Buffalo. And Ralphie, man, got to tell you, I think you're enjoying your summer. I see out east. I might have seen you at a ballpark recently.
Yeah, did a drive across country with Brian from Wager Talk and stopped at a few sites and plan on doing some mini 1 or 2 day junkets. Being in New Jersey is amazing. You're a few hours from 8, maybe 9 ballparks. So excited to do that. But you think everyone's working on college football. College basketball is right around the corner. I was working on new coaches and where those coaches came from. So got to throw in a little college basketball in there as well.
Nothing gets by you, Ralph, man. That's why we love you. We haven't even kicked off college football, the NFL, and my man's locked into college. Who's, by the way, a little birdie when I was out in Vegas a couple of weeks ago, kind of told me that do not expect UNLV to be very good this year. So I don't know what the conference win total might be in the Mountain West, but I was told that they are not going to be very competitive this year. So take it for what it's worth.
In football or basketball?
In basketball.
Okay. I don't think so in football either. We'll see. But no, that's amazing. I don't even think the Blue Book, I think it's called the Blue Book. I buy it every year for college basketball. I don't even think that's out yet, Ralph. So you're even like taking a jump on them.
Oh, that's of course Blue Ribbon, a must for anyone to have. There are 59 new head coaches this year in Division I college basketball. So quite a bit of turnover this year.
That's amazing. And lots of changes coming up even farther with conferences, but that's awesome. Ralph is on it early, and that always brings his clients lots of value. Nice work again, Ralph. Well, hey, summer was great for me. Did a little vacation and went up to northern Wisconsin and the lake home, forced some nostalgia on my kids. How I used to roll going up to the quiet country, let's just say, pine trees and fishing and all that fun stuff. I got that on my system. So now I'm all recharged to have a great football year, hopefully, obviously. And
did you wear your Bucky the Badger outfit while you're up there?
That's like bringing sand to the beach, or just like if you're a rock star, you wear your own concert T-shirt. I was in Wisconsin. In Arizona, I wear plenty of Bucky stuff there, Ralph. So no, it's pretty worn out. And obviously with my background here, we'll see what we're thinking about Bucky the Badger this year. But before we get into a little college football, got to talk about something else that's very important. And to you guys, I'm sure it's just as important as me, if not more, the food, man. And me and Chris text a little bit about it. And you showed me some really good recipes, Chris. And I'm excited to hear more this year. And I want to ask you guys, and we'll just go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What are your top five appetizers or finger foods for watching a college football game? No Buffalo Wild Wings, that's a meal. So no, I know Marco would do that, but no pizza. Pizza's a meal, but let's go with just finger foods, kind of just snacking around. And I'll start right now, and I'll start really easy to kick it off. I'm just going to go with ranch dip. And ranch dip with the sour cream, you just get a ranch packet mix. It's just so quick and easy to do. And you usually have some carrots laying around, some cucumbers. You can use crackers with it. It's pretty much used for everything almost, and can be good with anything. So even though from a taste perspective, you can probably come up with some better stuff, but I have to use that as my top 5 just because how economical it is and how easy it is to use. So Ralph, why don't you go next?
I'm going to put 5 as something real salty, either Fritos or potato chips. And I try not to have them in the house because when you're getting nervous on a college football Saturday, typing in all the stats, if they're there, I'm going to eat them. So I'm going to put them at 5 because I hope not to ever have them in the house. But when you go to the grocery store hungry, somehow it ends up in my cart on occasion.
All right. Chris?
So I am not allowed to say honey gold buffalo wings. Like, that's not an option.
Well, no, I can't because that's more of a meal to me. Now, we will next year maybe have meals, but right now it has to be something that's just a straight up app.
Okay, I'm going to go with queso and chips. I mean, it's hard to really turn away and push away a big vat of melted cheese with some pico in there and some fresh jalapenos and some nice salty tortilla chips. Like, that's a hard thing to do. There's a great food place in Tex-Mex place in Austin called El Arroyo. And Clay, who is the owner there for a long, long time, every time we would go to Austin, he just brought like a vat, like literally a bucket of queso over to our college game day bus, and we would just plop it down right in the middle of the floor between Kirk and myself and the other guys on the bus, and it was just a beautiful thing. So I'd have to go queso dip and chips.
A vat of cheese to watch a big.
It was lovely. It was lovely. Of course, I was wearing half of it, but
you gotta be, man. Oh, but geez, that's after a long day of work and talking football. That just sounds like it hits the spot, man. That sounds delicious. Yeah, I agree, and that goes with a lot of sports too. I'm gonna do the next. We'll do 2 in the next because we want to get this thing rolling. I'm gonna go with salami and cheese plate. It's just standard. Simple, always hits the spot. I'm a big cheese fan, Chris, especially with some of my roots in Madison, Wisconsin behind me. Love the cheese, love salami. It goes great together. Throw some crackers on it. Very simple. And I'm going to go peanuts with M&Ms as number 3. Now, I like the peanut M&Ms plenty, but there's something different about just having the M&Ms in a bowl with the peanuts. It tastes better for me for some reason. I can control my intake of chocolate and intake of nuts on every single grab. So, I can balance it out and kind of do what I want and play around with it.
It's almost healthy.
Almost. And I'll even accept trail mix right there, too. I'll accept trail mix for that. So that's my 4 and 3. Ralph, what do you got?
I'm going to go peanuts/cashews. And again, I try to keep that on 4th because I try not to have them. And then last year, I tried to get in something semi-healthy, and it was just plain old raisins. I can't remember. Since the last time I bought the little box of red raisin, whatever they're called, Son of Life or raisins in the little 6-packs. And been chewing on raisins during football games to try to be a little more healthy than chocolate and peanuts.
Awesome, Chris.
Well, I'll continue the raisin thing, and I'm going to go with yogurt raisins, like those Sun-made yogurt covered raisins. Again, it almost is healthy because it's not really chocolate, but it's yogurt and the sugar from the raisin. But it gives you a little bit of a sweet tooth satisfaction. And then I'm being the Italian that I am. I'm not going to go pepperoni. Soppressata is my favorite like cured meat product. So I love getting a little a hunk of soppressata, or just going to the Italian market, getting it sliced nice and thin, and just rolling that up. Maybe throw a little Parmigiano Reggiano with some good sharp provolone in there as well. Can't go. You can never go wrong with cheese, Kiev. You're absolutely right.
I love prosciutto, and I love the fact that you can kind of see through it. That nice, really thin. It's got so much salt in it. It's delicious. And that's a great segue into my next one, Chris, because my number 2 is hoagie dip. Hoagie dip is delicious, my man. Salami, some vinegar in there, maybe provolone cheese, lettuce, olive oil, mayonnaise. Just dip some of those hard pieces of bread, those like French or Italian.
Than a slice of pizza there. I'm going to veto why we can't use pizza if you're going to use a hoagie dip.
Hoagie dip's an appetizer. Well, it just depends how much I could eat it for a meal, Ralph. I'll tell you that. I would have no complaints if someone said, "Here's your meal. It's hoagie dip with some bread."
I can feel my heart stopping beating right now as you're describing hoagie dip with olive oil and mayonnaise and shit.
What about you, Ralph? I don't know if you gave us a number 3. You have 3 or 2 left.
I got 2 left. I'll just give you both right now because my number 2 is popcorn, and my number 1 is I would say nachos, but it's more just chips and cheese. I don't want any of the sauce in there. I just want the horrible, bad for you, gooey yellow cheese that you microwave with some jalapenos and chips. That's it. Chips and cheese, my clear number 1, no question.
Chris.
Yeah, I'll continue the cheese theme with 2 of them, and I believe these were the 2 that I shared with you, Kiev, last year around Thanksgiving. Number 1 is this cheese melt that I make. It's a combination of Gouda, Brie, and Gruyere that you melt in the oven, and then when it's about 5 minutes before it's done, take it out. You sprinkle some panko on top of it. You get a nice little crisp top with gooey goodness of all of those conflicting type cheeses. So that's one. And then the other one is the cheese ball, and that's literally what I call it. It has no real name. It is cream cheese, it is dried beef, and it is scallions. And you just mix it all up. You throw some Triscuits in there, some celery, or some carrots, and you talk about salty goodness. That's what the cheese ball is.
I love it. And what's funny about that cheese ball, I made it and showed you some pictures. It was delicious. I didn't have the beef bits. I used bacon bits instead.
Mm-hmm.
And that just served it completely fine with the scallions, cream cheese. It was delicious. And I was hoping you're going to say that because I didn't want to steal it from you since you gave it to me. So that Gouda one, I got to do by myself. And time caption that, I think it was about 12 minutes and 50 seconds in for everyone. If you need to come back and make that delicious recipe Chris just gave you. And I'm going to give you my number 1. And I don't disagree with any of these, first of all. These are delicious.
There is no wrong answer. It's food.
No, there's no wrong answer, but it gets me excited for football games. Taco dip, man. I'm sorry. It's the layered taco dip, sour cream in there, bean, a pico de gallo, olives, lots of cheese, obviously. It's delicious. I even like the taco dip with the taco seasoning. You mix with sour cream, throw that in there too, and some tortilla chips. Taco dip hits the spot for some reason on any football Sunday or Saturday. And I have to say that's my number 1, man. But I do the runners up. I would say is popcorn. I almost did popcorn, deviled eggs, dill dip, and I wrote smoky bacon wraps. Those are my runner ups for anybody preparing a fun full of Saturday football coming up. Well, great stuff, guys. Thanks for doing that little exercise with us. one question before we get into the big plays, or at least the big conference previews. How has the transfer portal changed the way that you handicap the preseason? I'll start with you, Ralph.
Oh, how about 100%? So many people looked at returning starters, and to me, returning starters is obviously a factor now, but it's just probably 30% of what the factor is. So it's, for those that need somewhere to go and at least quantify who the starters are, I think you have to go to 247sports.com. I have no affiliation with them, but when you look at their team ranks for recruiting, they also have a team ranks for their transfers. So it gives you a good idea of why USC is number 46 in recruiting when they should be recruiting a lot better. Well, when you look that they used 12 of those spots to bring transfers in, including a couple starters from his Oklahoma team, you realize that when you put those two together, they have a top 15 class overall. So I think 247 Sports is the one place you must go to quantify the difference between using a recruiting ranking, using a transfer rating, and now they actually combine the both. A great usage of numerical values, and thank you 247sports.com for doing that.
I agree 100%. And 247 does a great job. I always use them for my recruiting rankings, and just looking at these transfers, looking at the articles, looking at the biggest impact players are huge for me. Chris, how does it change for you?
Yeah, I think you probably get. I can speak for myself, obviously, a later start because of the portal and because of the deadlines and how late people are transferring in and transferring out, and how, in addition to that, you're getting some coaching changes later and later. So you're really not getting a full view of the team as early as you have in the past. I mean, you take like USC, for example, overhaul the entire coaching staff, and you bring in you overhaul your entire offense with the quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. So it really changes the perception and the outlook on certain teams, and even really, you really, I think it brings even a greater sense of uncertainty because you really don't know ultimately how all these changes are going to pan out.
Yeah, I actually did mine a little later this year. I know some win totals came out earlier, just like they always do seem to do every single year. Bets come out earlier. You could have bet the national championship game during the game. Actually, Brett Powers did that. And what's funny about the transfer portal is that it makes some teams in returning production not nearly as important. I used to really factor that in for a lot of the teams, especially, when it comes to the better conferences. Look at LSU, I mean, they're really built on it. Like you said, Ole Miss, right? These teams with the transfer portal gave them a completely different outlook to the season, and that's a great place to go, Ralph, 24/7 to rank those transfers, man.
Let me just give you an example. I did a preseason start chart for every team and how many starts they had at this school and how many career starts they have. These are projected starters for USC this year. Williams at quarterback, 7 starts at Oklahoma last year. Dye at running back, 19 starts at Oregon. Addison, wide receiver, All-American, 13 starts at Pittsburgh. Wide receiver Williams, 1 start at Oklahoma. Then you look on the defense, they have 3 more starters. Linebacker Lee, 13 starts at Bama. Williams, McCutcheon was a cornerback, 1 start at Oklahoma. Blackman, a quarterback, 16 starts at Colorado. And Shaw, 12 starts at Ohio State. Those are the players that did not play on USC that have career starts for other teams that are expected to start for USC this year.
And where can we find that info?
You know what? I'm going to post it at Wager Talk. It's not available. I believe I shot you an email with it a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And please pass it on to Chris as well.
Absolutely. Will do. And we'll forward that. Great stuff. Let's get into this season win totals and futures per conference, Chris. And I think I might have a play on every conference. We'll see here. But we'll start with the American Athletic Conference. And actually, now that I say that, this is the only conference I don't have a play in. So Ralph, why don't you start with the American Athletic Conference? I look at Houston and I look at Cincinnati, and I still think Cincinnati should be favored, but I just agree with kind of the setup there. And the season win totals kind of were on for me. What are your thoughts?
It's funny. I went into the season wanting to fade Cincinnati. Obviously, going through the changes, losing your quarterback. But I'm a big offensive line guy. And when you look at Cincinnati's offensive line, they returned 3 first-team all-conference starters, and the other 2 offensive linemen each have 20 career starts at Cincinnati. Obviously, you have an Eastern Michigan quarterback, so I think they clearly deserve to be the favorite. I think they're a step ahead of Houston. But where I find the value in the AAC, the top 3 teams as far as returning experience are USF, EC, and Tulane. And I am on the Pirates this year. Mike Houston's in your 4th year. Yes, he has a new OC in DC this year. But you look at what East Carolina did last season. They went 5-3, but they were plus 106 yards in conference game. And for all new handicappers out here, it's very important when you're looking at conference comparisons, make sure you're using conference-only stats. I'll give a site out again. I have no connection to this, but CFB Stats is by far the best place for college football stats for me. You click conference only, you do a quick addition in an Excel, and you can get the yards per game diff. So the number 1 team in the AAC was Cincinnati at plus 131 yards per game in conference action. East Carolina was number 2 at plus 107 yards per game. That gives us value from their 5-3 record. Returning 15 starters, bringing a couple transfers, 4th year of the system, and Mike Houston has now changed what I think is the mentality there. And when I look at their schedule, they're over under 6.5 this year. These numbers are from FanDuel yesterday. And of those games, they are scheduled by 6. They are favored by 6 or more points in 6 games, and they are a toss-up in 3 games. So when you're a favorite of almost a touchdown in 6 games and the total's only 6.5, to me, by far my best bet for a conference win total.
Wow, great stuff. And they had a pretty tough non-conference last year. Appalachian State's a good team, South Carolina. I think that you're onto something there. And I love CFB Stats, man. I've been using this since the Stone Age. So I agree with you. That's a great site to use. Love how it breaks down. But wow, favored in 6 games by 6 points or more. And they're in 6.5 right now, plus 120 to the over. You found maybe a diamond in the rough here. I want to look more into this one. Chris.
To follow up on what Ralph was saying, I mean, ECU is a team that in recent years I backed quite a bit in the role of big underdog. And you look at some of their losses last year at South Carolina, UCF, Houston, all close losses that they very easily could have won. And Holt Mailers coming back, and this was a team that had their bowl game canceled, and they were really excited about getting to play in a bowl game. So that opening week game against NC State is a very dangerous game for the Wolfpack. Going to an experienced team, ECU gets an in-state team at home in Greenville. I'm going to wait and see what that line does, because I think with the hype and expectation that people have for the Wolfpack this year, that number might hit 13 or so. So I'm going to wait, and I could see myself taking the Pirates week 1 against NC State. But the 2 things that I played in the American, the thing that I liked the most is I was able to get South Florida under 4.5. I'm not sure 4.5 is still out there anymore. I know someone sent me that they were able to get 4. So check around. Look, this is a bad team. When you're a bad team in a conference and your non-conference schedule is BYU, Florida, and Louisville, you basically have no shot. I mean, you'll other than Howard, there isn't a game on that schedule that I can say I expect them to win. You've got to go to Cincinnati. You've got to go to Houston. The only team in the league you beat last year was Temple, and now you have to go there. You still have SMU and UCF and ECU at home. Like, I don't know where 5 wins are coming. I know they brought in Bohannon, the Baylor transfer at quarterback, to help improve their offense, but defensively, they were so bad and so non-competitive. You keep reading about how Jeff Scott thinks he has a group finally that's ready to compete. Boy, I sure as hell hope so, because the way that schedule breaks down, it looks like a 1-5 start at the very least, and probably a max of 3 wins. So I'm under 4.5 on USF, and I actually took a shot on Houston to win 10 games and Houston to win the AAC. I think their defensive line is really, really good. I think Toon is in the conversation for best quarterback in the conference. I think this is a team that, under Danner Holgerson, again, I think he's a guy who has brought in some players to really create an exciting style of football. And outside of Cincinnati, I think they are the most likely winner in the American. So I took a chance on Houston to win 10 games at a nice plus number, and the Cougars to win the AAC.
So DraftKings has South Florida 4.5, but it's -135. I like that.
Fine.
I don't have a problem with that at all. Houston plus 250. Yeah, and Cincinnati's plus 190. They're telling you that these are the two teams. Maybe they do take a step back, and it's just going to depend on Cincinnati's new quarterback coming in. I think it was a 4-star quarterback. So I think the numbers are pretty close for me. But no, I don't disagree with any of that. Let's move on to the ACC.
Let me just jump in one thing as you were mentioning that win total for new bettors here. A half a win in a college football season win total,
massive,
about 45 cents. So if you have two and you're comparing them, obviously most people, if they're betting the under, want to have that hook in there and will happy to pay the extra juice. But if you're comparing two win totals and you're looking where the value is, again, 45 cents to maybe 50 cents is about the value of a half win for those totals.
It is. I agree. And there's less games in college than the NFL. Keep that in mind. These half games are massive. So, try to shop around is what we always try to say, to get the best lines possible. Let's move on to the ACC in Chris's conference, right? Isn't this the Miami Hurricanes winning it all, Chris?
In 1991, yes. This is the ACC champion Miami Hurricanes. Now they're a year away. I think the best thing that Miami has going now is, number one, they have their quarterback, at least for the year. We'll see if he stays or comes out with the type of year that he could have. But you've got your head coach. You've built a great staff, and you have an athletic director now who has offered a ton of optimism and has a past track record of success in what he built at Clemson. He's a South Florida guy. So I think Dan Radakovich being the AD now, everyone is on the same page in Coral Gables. So I really don't have a play on the Hurricanes this year in terms of the win totals. So there were a couple of things that I played here. I played Louisville over 5.5, but that number is long gone, and I probably wouldn't play it at 6.5. I think that's too big of a move. It's hard to make a case for anything with Wake Forest right now, given the Hartman situation. But I think I took a shot with two teams in the Coastal. I played North Carolina to win the ACC. I took them at 20-1, and I think last year, I can't remember if we discussed it or not. We kind of, at least I had a feeling Clemson was a little bit vulnerable coming off of the Trevor year and losing so many guys. I just landed on the wrong team. North Carolina has recruited really, really well over the last few years. They were garbage on both sides of the ball up front on the offensive line and defensive line last year. Couldn't protect Hal, couldn't rush the passer, couldn't tackle. I would think with Gene Chizik coming in now, that should get better. And I think the way the ACC schedule shakes down for them, you don't get Clemson in the regular season. There's a really good chance they could find themselves in the ACC championship game. And if you're holding 20-1 on them, you're in a really nice position to be able to do something. So I think that Coastal is wide open. I think UNC is a play there. And then Georgia Tech is the other team. I took under 3.5 at plus money as the season win total. I'm probably going to take under 2 ECC conference win total as well. Like, this is a schedule that is made to get your head coach fired. Your non-conference schedule is Ole Miss, UCF, and Georgia. You also have Clemson. You also have to go to North Carolina, and you've got to go to Pitt. Like, you look at and you go to Florida State as well, and Virginia Tech, who are more talented than you. Outside of the Western Carolina and the Duke game, like, I don't know where the wins are. Like under 3.5 at plus money looks really, really good for the for the Jackets, and under 2 as a season win total, and the conference wins only on. I don't see 3 wins. Like, it was funny. I was talking with Stanford Steve before, and we could also make a case for Duke play under a half in terms of a conference win total. Like, you lay 160 on under a half, and you look at Duke's schedule. I mean, Duke's schedule, like the Georgia Tech game is like the only game that maybe they have a chance to win, and they're going to be like an 11-point underdog. So take Duke minus 160 under a half, and maybe you fool around a little bit and take a double-digit dog against Georgia Tech. Like, potentially that could be the only win. So there are a couple of things that I think to play around with involving the ACC Coastal there.
Take Duke and Georgia Tech under, playing each other. Still both can happen.
Exactly right. Thread that needle.
Funny, you did a humble brag about that 6.5 on Louisville, or 5.5 to 6.5 on Louisville. That's completely acceptable on this show, because it shows people that when we bet, we are betting as early as possible. We are doing our analysis as early as possible. So please say that. I've actually wrote down the ones I bet, and I'll tell you what the lines are now. I think that's the fair way to do it.
Right.
And I am completely for that, because people need to learn to do this stuff early. There's no value, or much less value, right before the season.
Yeah.
And
this was just for June 30th at FanDuel, rather, over 5.5 minus 140. That's when so we're looking, what, 6 weeks ago is when I made this bet. And now I have an opportunity that it's gone up to 6.5 in a lot of spots. Do I want to fool around and try and thread the needle and get that middle on 6, which, if you look at Louisville's schedule, seems like a very likely result, which is why I would not play over 6.5.
Yeah, maybe you always buy back for half and see if you can mill that sucker.
Exactly right.
Too. Very great opportunity there. ACC, Ralphie, what are you thinking here?
Well, I'm going to double up on what Chris said. And I just want to mention, I'm not here to hype stuff that I have for free at Wager Talk, but I do a college football schedule guide. So you have every schedule, you have my power rating numbers, you have my home edges, and it's color coded so you can easily see. It gives you the projected wins as well. Looking at that guide for Georgia Tech, as Chris mentioned, I am on under 3.5 as well. I have them as a projected 35-point favorite against Western Carolina, and a 2-touchdown favorite against Duke, and then a pick'em game at home against Virginia, at least within the 2s. That's it. Every other game, they're going to be double digits, with the exception of Virginia Tech. So completely agree with the 3.5. I think this team is ready to get blown up again. And my go-to team, and I'm really not a fan of having a go-to team that has a lot of hype, but I am a true believer in this NC State team. I bet them to win the national championship. I bet them to win the ACC. I bet them plus 800 at the conference. I bet them over 8.5 3 times. When I look at the NC State schedule, they are going to be a favorite in every game, with the exception of going to Clemson on October the 1st. They're going to be a 4-point favorite in 11 of the games, and I'm laying a number of 8.5. So there's 2 teams I've been completely on among all other teams. It's Marshall, which we'll talk about, which I bet twice, but that line's already moved a point in the win total. And NC State, by far my number 2 team, as far as I think that there's value. I have them as a favorite of 8 or more in 9 games. So to me, clearly value at 8.5, incredible value. And I am going to take a shot that perhaps they could pull that upset in Clemson and win the conference.
That is amazing. And I really hope you're right, because I have a ticket on something that we're saving for last that might mirror some of the stuff that you said, Ralph, on NC State. I took NC State over 8.5 wins at minus 130. It's at minus 150 now. I still think there's plenty of value. I agree with you. They're going to be favored in most of their games. I thought it would be 10, but maybe it is 11. The go to Clemson is what sucks, but they avoid Miami and they avoid Pittsburgh. They get Boston College, Florida State, and Wake Forest at home. And how many of us was at the kiosks or the computer screens this morning at about 5:45, 6 a.m. seeing what we can get down on that poor Sam Hartman news? I was able to find a skin or two that was able to oblige, but
I'm deciding right now in my power ratings. I moved Wake Forest down 5 points without Hartman, and I may go to 6.5 points. That's how important he is as far as that team's concerned.
Yeah, I got to get back to work on that later today too, because when I move someone down, that means I got to slightly adjust some others up. But I'll be working on that. And yeah, that Hartman thing was just some terrible news for them. But I have the NC State to win the ACC at plus 1,100. I know if Clemson gets them at home, they're going to have to get an extra game over Clemson. I think
they nearly beat them there a few years ago.
Yeah, and they want to beat them last year. Yeah. Yeah. So I got plus 1,100. It's now plus 800 on the DraftKings. I'm just GJ Uiagalelei. I'm not high on him, and I'm sick of saying his name. He's got to go, man. I'm sick of saying that. It's too hard. But Clemson lost. They lost Venables. Sweeney can be a little overwhelming. If it works, he's a great coach. But if he's got a bad team, he could lose a team or just some bad luck, just with the way he coached that hard-nosed style. So there's a chance they could fall. And Chris, I'll do it for you. I took Miami plus 700 to win it too. And I'm just hoping for that miracle Miami versus NC State ACC championship game, because I'll be sitting pretty if that happens. But
I'll get you tickets if that happens. Yeah, well, I'll buy you. I won't pay for your airfare, but I'll get you tickets.
I will remember that. Maybe you should go with me if you're not already working. So
yeah, can we get college game day at the side of the ACC championship? I'd be all for that. It's interesting because you mentioned Clemson, and I don't know what way it's going to go. I would think as bad as things were last year for Clemson, as bad of a passing game as they had, which is worse than you actually think it was. If you look like the yards per dropback, went from 8.1 to 8 to like 5.5 last year. DJ was terrible, but as bad as it was, they still won 10 games, and their 3 losses were to the team that would eventually win the national championship on a non-offensive touchdown. You lost in overtime to NC State, and you lost to the team that wound up winning the ACC pit. Like they were that close to like getting back again, despite having a horrific offense by their standards. And I think you mentioned Dabo Sweeney with a bit of a red ass per se, some motivation. Dabo is sitting there just waiting to say, I told you so at the end of the year. Oh, Tony Elliott gone, coordinator's gone, Brent Venables gone, DJ. I guess old Dabo Sweeney can't coach after all. Like, he is dying to be able to say, I told you so at the end of the year. So while I ultimately don't know what way it's going to go for Clemson, I wouldn't be surprised if Clemson puts it all together this year, led by that defense, and has a better year than a lot of people might think that they have.
You mentioned the coordinators. Chris, can you name the last time that a Power 5 team lost both coordinators to Power 5 programs? I mean, again, that's got to be worth a point or two, at least early in the season. Now, yes, they promoted from within on the OC, but that's taking everyone up a notch. So there has to be an effect, at least the first game or two during these practices.
I got all the faith in Dabo, and maybe Brett Venables isn't a good coach. I made a point to somebody about my Oklahoma ticket under that we're going to be hinting on here. I just think that sometimes the coordinators get too much praise, and it is the head coach. So it just depends upon what it was. But what I'm looking at is plus 1,100. I'm not looking at plus 300. I'm not looking at plus 400. I'm looking at a massive number here. And this is the situation that you're looking for when you're hunting for these big numbers. And Miami, over 8.5, I got it plus 100. It's minus 130. The culture with Mario Cristobal down there, they avoid NC State, Wake, and Clemson. So there you go. It's going to be decided in Pittsburgh, probably, if they're going to make the ACC. It's at home against Pittsburgh, at the end of the year, if they're going to be in the ACC championship. But I love the fact that they're at home. So I'm excited for Miami, and I'm sure Chris is cautiously optimistic.
Yeah,
But
I have a question. Someone asked me on Twitter, so I just want to share because I'm sure there's a lot of new viewers that have the same question. When we're betting season win totals over under, I'm betting the same unit on each. When I'm betting 10-1 dogs to win the ACC or the national championship, I'm not betting that same unit as I am win total. So people realize just because we're saying best bets, they do not mean they're equal for the same amount. When we're betting 10-1 dogs,
it's like a quarter unit or a third of a unit or something.
Over under on a game.
Yeah, half unit stuff here on a lot of this for me. Great question. Big Ten country. Let's move into it, Ralph. I'm going to start with you, and you're going to tell us on how you have Wisconsin to meet NC State in the national championship game.
Well, I'm gonna say this. How the heck can you say over 10.5 at minus 250 has value? Well, I want to point out to people, how do you figure what value is when you have a minus 250 like Ohio State laying with an over-under of 10.5? Again, another question I got on Twitter, so I'm going to take 1 second just to give people to quantify what the percentages have to be. If you have a minus 250, always multiply it by 10, so you're minus 2,500. How many $100 bets does it take you to win that back? 25 $100 bets. So you have to go 25 and 10, divide that out, and that's the percentage that you need to have in your mind if there's value laying 250. I did not bet Ohio State, but if someone asked me, I was close to it if I had jumped on it earlier, because they are going to be favored. Their average line this year is minus 24 points per game. They are favored by 11 or more in every game this year. They are not going to lose 2 games with this Knowles defense as double-digit favorite.
Okay.
Can I jump in?
I want to say one thing first. Yep. You said it's 45 cents a half point. Obviously, this would bring it up to 12.5 games at minus 250, right? But what people have to realize is that when it comes to the extremes, like the low 1, 2, or 3, or the high 10, 11, 12, it all changes. And then you have to look at more by game basis, because the half points are 45 cents, yes. But at the very end, if a team's just going to beat everybody, they're going to beat everybody. That's what I want people to realize from that. Go ahead, Ralph.
I was going to say what Ralph was alluding to, like betting Ohio State minus 250 or whatever it is to win the Big Ten. I bet them to win the Big Ten already, and because I don't see them dropping multiple conference games. I think offensively they are light years ahead of everybody else in that league. Defensively, they'll be better with Knowles. And if I think they're going to reach the Big Ten championship game, they're going to be a heck of a lot bigger than minus 250 on the money line against whoever comes out of the Big Ten West. So it's actually a better price on Ohio State now to win the Big Ten than what you're going to get the week of the game. So I bought the Buckeyes minus 250 to win the Big Ten.
Yeah, I agree with what you said there 100%. I am on the Buckeyes for a later play, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But as far as the Big Ten, and I love the Big Ten, being a Badger fan, I think the West is a total mess. I look at all their schedules. They all beat each other up at the top at the last 4 games: Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin. They all play each other at the end. And then it's usually 2 of them, 2 away, 2 home. Most of them are getting Ohio State, maybe not Minnesota. I just think that the win totals on these top West teams around 8 is correct. I am not as high on Wisconsin because of what I saw from Graham Mertz the last 2 years. He had the yips or something, and
you shouldn't be high on him.
Yeah, it sucks because I was after that first year, but he there's just something wrong. I'm hearing good things in camp. Bobby Ingram's the new offensive coordinator there. And that's great because Rudolph, wanted him out of there as fast as possible. Offensive line. What are you doing, Chris?
He wound up Georgia Tech. Is that where he wound up? Georgia Tech's offensive line coach now?
Yeah, I think he bet the win total under there as well. So basically, I just took 2 teams to win the West. I took Nebraska at plus 380 and for a half star. I think Scott Frost feels like the Jim Harbaugh coming into this year. Now that he's got Mark Whipple over there, this could completely change it. And they don't have that turnover crazy what was it, Rodriguez, the quarterback?
Martinez. You're not
Adrian
Martinez.
Martinez.
Adrian Martinez. Turnover where he was always blowing the game at the end, and you could blame Scott Frost for some of that. And then one year, the field goal kicker. It's just Mark Whipple is the reason, in my opinion, that Kenny Pickett looks so great at Pittsburgh. And now he just did like a horizontal move to Nebraska. You got to remember, Nebraska is the best recruiting West team. They are the best recruiting team out West. So seeing them as a better number than Wisconsin after Wisconsin lost their top 3 pass catchers and Ferguson, right? Their tight end, the big tight end Ferguson was massive. Davis, the running backs could be a little bit messy. I just think that Nebraska's got plenty of a good chance to win. And I even took a small shot at Purdue at plus 550. And that's one of the lines that actually moved away from me is plus 600 for a small, like half unit or so to win the Big Ten West here. And what I like about Purdue is their schedule. I mean, the defense wasn't much good last year, but they shocked a lot of teams. Aiden O'Connell is back, and they avoid the Ohio State and Michigan. So that's 2 losses from the East that these other teams are going to incur from the Ohio States and the Michigans that could boost them into the national championship, the Big Ten championship game, and cash that plus 550 for us. So I like those 2 numbers, guys. Any thoughts on that, Ralph?
Yeah, I bet the only bet I made is I was a little late to the party, like I said, with Ohio State. But if there was one way to bet it, it would clearly be the over. But I am buying into Minnesota. You look at the QB play, and Morgan has 39 career starts. That's number 1 in college football for a returning quarterback. So that experience, and I'm going to buy in to row the boat. Now, I'll be very honest. It was with great hesitation that I made that, because when your toughest games are all on the road, they go to Michigan State as a dog, they go to Penn State as a dog, they go to Nebraska, which I have them as a dog, and they go to Wisconsin as a dog. That's 8 games right there. So, they're going to have to pull one of those. I have them a favorite in all the rest. So I do expect they'll get one. My weakest conference by far, a lean on Minnesota over.
And they can't lose to Bowling Green again. So we'll just throw that out there. Let's move on to the Big 12 so we can.
Actually, I have one
okay.
other Big 10 play that I did make. And again, I made this bet, actually went back and looked the same day as I played Louisville over 5.5. I played Indiana under 4.5. Minus 135. I don't know what Indiana's number is now. I'm sure, if anything, it's now 4. Like, they have a ton of problems. I don't know, again, who you're beating. You got Idaho as a non-conference game. You've got Western Kentucky, who's going to put up a ton of points. You got at Cincinnati as a non-conference game, and you're in the Big Ten East. Like, I just don't know how you're winning 5 games when you have automatic losses built in with Michigan, Ohio State, probably Penn State, and maybe even at Michigan State. So I don't see it with Indiana. They were the classic 2020 team who had a magical year, won a bunch of games that they shouldn't really have won, the Penn State call, and some other comebacks, and Tom Allen with the rah-rah locker room speech and the family, and it was a great story. But they kind of got a little overhyped last year and completely fell flat on their face. and I don't see how they get to 5 wins this year. So I got under 4.5 at minus 135, and if you can find 4.5, by all means, I would run out and bet that.
Fine, 4.5. God bless you. I don't disagree. That year they were outgained in a ton of their games and just won. It was one of those Pythagorean type situations where you're like, geez, this team is way overrated. Let's move on to the Big 12 then, and I'll get started here. Oklahoma, I already hinted on taking the under 9.5. It's now up to minus 125. Little line value there. Took this as a larger play for 1.5 stars. I think that just they lost all that production, and they're going to get some back with Brett Venables. But I don't know what Brett Venables is. Maybe you're right, and it's Dabo Swinney that had more influence on that defense, even though we saw Brett Venables screaming all the time as well. I'm just not that high on Dylan Gabriel. I mean, he was okay to me at UCF. I thought Mackenzie Milton was better. I'm not that high on him. And they have some tough games at Nebraska, at TCU, at Iowa State. And don't forget about Oklahoma State and Baylor. The Big 12 is a mess right now. My number is 8.2 wins with the Big 12, so I took that. And this was the play that I think that I like the most, maybe out of them all. And yes, this number moved, but I took Kansas over 2.5 wins, believe it or not, guys. This is the first time in my freaking life I probably bet Kansas over anything. But you got to understand that they have a real coach now, and it's Lance Leopold. And Chris and I know quite well. We were on him his second year at Buffalo, and we took him all the way to the national.
Title game, 20-1 or whatever it was.
We hedged, though. I mean, so that was the important thing. We hedged, and it gave us the opportunity to make 5-10 units, when you're in that situation. So they're 2.5, and it was plus 120. It's now minus 135. So there's 55 cents, but I still like it because this team beat Texas last year. They gave Oklahoma a run for their money. And I see the wins versus Tennessee Tech and Duke for sure. All right. Tennessee Tech and Duke, they need one more win to go over that. Other possibilities: Iowa State could have a flat spot over there. TCU could have a flat spot. Oklahoma State, they're at West Virginia. They get Texas at home, and Kansas State at the end, which is the rival. There's also obviously the Oklahomas and the Baylors. Who knows? But how do you not bet on Lance Leopold here after what he did in Buffalo? But also with this conference under such turmoil, with Oklahoma and Texas leaving, they return all their guys. And you're not getting a ton, minus Oklahoma, you're not getting a ton of transfers in to the other schools because, people are kind of vacating the Big 12. And I just think this also gave me a reason to take Kansas at a massive shot to win the Big 12 with beer money at plus 40,000, 400 to 1. And now it's down to 250 to 1. So little value there, obviously, by 150 spots, or you can use beer money, whatever you want. I think I threw a half unit on there. But if there's any year that a 400 to 1 can make it, it would be in a conference when it's turmoil and you have a great coach going. That might not lose, but I put way more on the Kansas over 2.5 at the plus 120. So that's the way I'm playing this. Chris, what are your thoughts?
I agree with you on Oklahoma. I think we've had some conversations on text about that. And you look at Oklahoma last year, even with Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley, no team in the country won more games by 7 points or fewer than the Sooners. So are they going to get that type of positive close game luck again with a team that loses its head coach, loses its quarterback, loses almost all of its offensive playmakers, loses everybody on defense in a league that, look, I didn't play any other win totals in this league because I think all these teams, I think if you throw Baylor, Iowa State, K-State, Oklahoma State, TCU, Texas in a hat and tell me any of those two teams made the Big 12 championship game, I wouldn't be surprised. So I did play Oklahoma under 9.5 minus 110 as the only win total I played. And then I found at FanDuel Oklahoma over 8.5. With a little bit of juice. So I made a pretty big play on the under 9.5. So I bought a little bit back on over 8.5, thinking maybe 9 is a logical spot for Oklahoma with all of those games in the Big 12 that maybe they lose a few this year. So I agree with you there. I did, because I just said about how you throw all these teams in a hat and nothing would surprise me. I did play two teams to win the conference. I played TCU at 16 to 1. Because I think offensively, with Dykes coming in, with the quarterbacks he's going to have to work with Quentin Johnson at wide receiver, I don't think the loss of Zach Evans at running back is as big as a lot of people are making it out to be because he didn't play a good chunk of last year. I think this was a program that kind of needed a reset button. They got guys, but I think maybe I love Gary Patterson, but might have gotten a little stale amongst the players, and the players might not have been getting the message. So I think it's good. And now look, Sonny's going to wear his defense out and put them in a position where they're going to have to be on the field probably a lot longer than they want to be. But I think TCU has the ability to make a big improvement this year. So I took them, and I know you're going to laugh at the next team that I said, but it was Iowa State. Iowa State was 20 to 1 to win the Big 12. And I think, again, it might be a good thing that Brock Purdy has moved on because he had a propensity last year. and maybe even prior to last year, to kind of turn the ball over quite a bit in some of their bigger games. And it was the highest expectation level that the program has ever had in Ames. And they had that close game against Iowa at home, and then they started turning the ball over again, and it just went downhill from there. But despite that, defense was top 10, top 12 in a ton of metrics. Will McDonald's back. You had 4 losses in the Big 12. All were by a touchdown or fewer. You outgained Baylor by like 200 yards and lost, the team that wound up winning the league. You outgained Oklahoma and lost in a one-score game. Like, in these types of years, I think Matt Campbell, his message, the way he coaches, the type of players that he has, I think you're more likely to get a surprise effort from Iowa State. And they've beaten Oklahoma and Texas and the bigger the bigger boys in the Big 12 in years where they weren't necessarily thought to have the best team. So if I said that I thought the Big 12 was a crapshoot, I certainly wanted to put my money where my mouth was with a couple of longer prices to win the league.
Well, why would I laugh? I took Kansas. Are you kidding me? I have no business laughing at you right there. Ralph, anything in Big 12?
Well, with your Kansas bet, Kiev, I now realize that, marijuana is legal in Arizona. So I understand perhaps you partook a little bit. Just FYI, I have Kansas as a double-digit dog in every game but those 2 wins. So, maybe you get one against TCU or West Virginia. I only made one bet. I pretty much stayed away from this conference. But I think it's a strong bet, and it's West Virginia under the total. I mean, the number's 5.5. When I look at my numbers that I have in West Virginia, I have them favored in 2 games, Kansas and Towson. And, you never know what's going to happen with Kansas. That's the second game of the year, and that's West Virginia after playing the backyard brawl against Pittsburgh. So they go to Pittsburgh for a big old-time rivalry that's renewed, and then are you looking past Kansas? Besides that, I have them basically pick them against TCU, pick them against Kansas State. To me, top play, only one play in the conference, West Virginia under 5.5.
Well, Ralph, I'll tell you this. If Kansas goes over 2.5, I'll go to the store and get you some of those edibles, and I'll bring them up to Vegas. And I want to see you eat a couple of those while you eat your words.
Marijuana brownies from the edible stores.
Dude, there's a store in like almost every corner now. It's kind of crazy down here. All right, well, Chris got to leave it at like 25 after, so let's get bounced here. Conversation, all I'm going to say is I took UAB before Bill Clark left, and I had massive line value, but now it moved back a bit, but I still have a slight line value. You have UAB over 8.5 wins, plus 140. It's still plus 105. I still think they do it, and I have them to win the conference at plus 250. It's now plus 230. I put a star on that. Bill Clark, even though he's gone, he has some back issues. You always scratch your head and wonder if something else happened. But Brian Vincent took over the duties, so there's consistency. The offensive coordinator there. And you got to remember Marshall's gone from this conference. Now, UAB does get UTSA at home. And we all loved UTSA last year, but now they lose a lot of defense. And I still think they're going to have a great offense, probably bet some overs at UTSA. But, Bill, I just think UAB is the foundation of the Conference USA now. And they return 8 starters on defense, the quarterback Dylan Hopkins, and 4 offensive linemen. So that's all I have. Ralph, what do you got?
Nothing. I made no wagers in this. The only lean I'll give you is I do like this Western Kentucky team. They do have to go to UTSA. They get UAB at home. But I made no wagers, so I'll throw it to Chris.
I made no wagers in Conference USA as well. The only thing that I considered making was Middle Tennessee under. That's the only thing I've thought about. But yeah, I don't have a great feel for this league at all. I know some people out there that are pretty strong on FAU under as well, but I have not made that bet. So, yeah, I got nothing right now in Conference USA.
All right, let's go to return of the MAC here. And I'm going to be honest, I could make cases for 3 teams to win this conference. It's really Toledo, Central Michigan, and to be honest with you, even Northern Illinois, even though they're massively fraudulent last year. But I chose one in a long shot instead. I'm taking Toledo over 7.5 wins, minus 120. It's at 8 at minus 110 now, so I have some line value. They're the unluckiest team, losing 3 games by 3 points or less. Massive 1.868 yards per play. Net yards per play, it's 1.68. And you're only 7-5. What the heck happened there? 6th in EPA margin last year. I mean, the good news is they get Central Michigan at home this year. very favorable schedule, -1 hard game at Ohio State. I think that over 7.5 breeze here, and they got Daquan Finn back, their quarterback. So I like that. I took Northern Illinois over 6.5 wins, -150. They're the luckiest team, and they were literally negative -0.87 yards per play and 87th in EPA. Just very strange. Well, they busted me and your ticket last year, Chris.
Yes, they did. I was so strong on the under for them, and just laughed at some of the way we lost some of those games.
I know, but I mean, they're 8th in returning production. They return all those guys that kind of dug deep in the fourth quarter, and I just think 6.5 is a little too low. And they also have a very favorable schedule. They get Central Michigan and Toledo at home. So I think they get to 7 wins, 8 wins. So I took that, and it's against my better judgment just because they're the team to fade. But the market adjusted a little bit, in my opinion, to that. So we'll see what happens. And here's the crazy long shot I'm taking. I just took for some beer money Bowling Green to win the match. Hey, man, they were a very good ATS team last year, and I was surprised. And I got them at 47-1, and now it's 25-1, so plus 2,500. Half star. It's a long shot. Their schedule sucks because they get Toledo and West Central Michigan from the West. But hey, they beat Minnesota last year. Played very close. Number 1 overall returning production team. The MAC is always a coin flip and a complete grab out of a hat, right? Like you were saying. So I'm okay with Bowling Green. Now I missed the season win total. I'm just happy with what I have here. So, Chris, what about you?
Yeah, no, I have not played anything in the MAC either. Normally, I love finding some conference win totals in the MAC, but I just haven't been able to do it this year for some reason. I know a couple of people that actually got the best numbers on Bowling Green in terms of season win totals, and are very high on Bowling Green and feel good about their position. So unfortunately, I don't have much else for you other than that. As again, this is a league that I kind of didn't really dig deep with due to time constraints so far.
Yeah, and same with me with the AAC. And I forgot to mention, I took Toledo at 400-1 or 4-1. Basically, it's now 3.8-1 to win the MAC too. So I'm Toledo most likely, but I took a little bit of them and Bowling Green. Anything, Ralph?
Yeah, I normally skip the favorite and go to the second team to start looking for value. But there's also times, guys, when there's value on the favorite. Toledo's the favorite to win the MAC. And I think at 4-1, they're great value. You look, they're going to be favored in 9 games by 8 points or more. They have 1 game in Northern Illinois. They're going to lose the Ohio State game, and they have a toss-up against San Diego State. So this is one where I'm on the Rockets. I'm on the Rockets to win the MAC at 4-1. I'm on the Rockets over 8 wins. And my only other one is Buffalo under 5.5. I have them favored in 4 games. They only have 2 other games between the threes. I think the Bulls are going to struggle this year because you know what? You have an Akron team and a BG game where Buffalo used to have those wins. Mm-hmm. They may not be so close now. We'll see what Moorhead does with Akron. Yep. I mean, they brought in 13 transfers. But, again, when you have a team that's used to getting a couple wins from the bottom feeders and now all of a sudden those are battles, those are the teams you look to fade.
Yeah, I'm not so sure yet on Moorhead as a head coach, too. I like him as a coordinator. Not 100% there. Mountain West, Chris. What about that conference?
Mountain West, I do have something for you here. I took Utah State under 7.5, and I think it's now 7. I think last year might have been a kind of perfect storm for the Aggies. I think. Oh, I'm sorry. I just had to laugh. Pause one bit. I just turned my head. I heard a noise downstairs, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? And I believe it was my cat who somehow found his way into the closet downstairs and pulled out. I just see him walking into our bedroom with his favorite toy. So after this podcast is done, I'm going to go downstairs and see if I heard a bang, and I'm like, I know something probably fell out of that downstairs closet, and he just walked into the bedroom where I see with him with this wire toy, kind of they drag it around. So I'm like, I can't wait to see this. So sorry for the interjection, but
no, that's okay.
I think you had Blake Anderson last year bringing his quarterback Logan Bonner, some other guys from Arkansas State, and they were a very fortunate team last year in a sense that no team won more games after trailing at halftime than Utah State. So they had some wins, and now you look at the way the schedule break. Like they add Alabama in the non-conference from an auto win last year. You lost to Boise State already. You got Boise State. You got BYU. I wonder if, like the second time around, it's not going to be as easy for Utah State. So I took Utah State under 7.5, and I think it's now 7 in most places. And I also took Nevada under 4.5. The Wolfpack, I think, are in a free fall. They hired a career assistant who laid higher, never been a head coach at this level. You lose guys to the transfer portal. You get guys kicked off the team. You're in a division with San Diego State, Fresno State, who should be good. San Jose State should still be okay. Like, I don't know. I think 4.5 for Utah for Nevada rather is a little high. So Utah State under, Nevada under for me in the Mountain West.
Yeah, Nevada for sure just took a beating that happened. The coach left with all of the players, went to Colorado State, which was a strange move. Kind of a horizontal move in a way. I just was a little confused by that. Why? I didn't get any good information about it. It's maybe just kind of wanted to see the mountains better. It's not like
throw the ball over the mountains.
Yeah, there you go. Ralph?
I bet Nevada 4.5. I still think there's some value betting them under 4. And I took Air Force. I think Boise and Fresno, not in the value of getting 2.5 to 1 to win. I took Air Force plus 450. They're plus 400 now. And I still think there's value because you get Boise at home and they only have UNLV prior. And when they go to Utah State's off a BYU game, which we know, being in that state is a big deal. So Air Force to win, Nevada under.
All right. So what I have is Fresno State over 8.5 wins. Minus 125. It's now minus 140. I think they're favored to win it all, aren't they, over Boise? I think last time I looked.
Boise's the favorite at FanDuel by just 20 cents, but they're basically close.
Very close. Jeff Tedford's back coaching. Jake Hayner's back at quarterback. Threw over 4,000 yards last year. 33 touchdowns, So I see maybe
that performance that Hayner had last year against UCLA might have been like the best quarterback performance of the year when you factor in all of the hits that he took during that game. I remember getting home like well after midnight and getting home and turning that game on at home and like staying up until 2:33 in the morning just to watch the end of it because it was an unbelievable game, UCLA, Fresno State, and how Hayner played in that game.
And when they attacked the Pac-12, those first two games, or second or third game, Oregon State and USC, they're going to be remembering that they can beat the Pac-12. And very interesting. And I have them as probably losses there. But if they get past at Boise State, it's smooth sailing for this team. And they avoid Air Force. And they avoid Utah State this year, right? There's just every other game they're going to be a massive favorite in. Maybe San Diego State will be a little bit closer, but there's been some people not so high on San Diego State this year. I just think over 8.5 should happen. And if they just get one of those games, Oregon State or USC, I think that they should be going over. And to be honest with you, Chris, I disagree a little bit with the Utah State. I kind of think that they might be the next best team in the Mountain West just because they return all those players and they finish the year great. And they beat Oregon State in their bowl game. And I know Oregon State, we don't know how much motivation they had going to LA down there, but they proved to me that they were pretty worthy. So we don't have much disagreement. So I'll just throw that out there. It's not like a bet the over on Utah State. But that's my thoughts with the Mountain West. And Nevada, it's funny. Everyone's so low on Nevada right now that I'm wondering if there's going to be a point where I have to buy on them. So I don't know. Ralph still seems to think the number's too high. So we'll wait on that one. Maybe ATS perspective with Nevada. Maybe they'll get way overblown from the market. So I'll be looking at that. Pac-12, we have a very messy Pac-12 because obviously the big news with USC and UCLA moving to the Big Ten. It's going to be a crazy landscape with college football that's coming up this year. But I'll start with you, Ralph. What do you like in the Pac-12?
Well, I think USC deserves to be favored, but I can't bet them because of all the transfers. This is what we talked about. What changed this offseason, with the transfers? USC brought in 19 transfers this year. So, yes, I power rated them number one, but the only bet I made, Arizona State over 6. I have them favored in 9 games by 5 points or more. I have them favored in 6 games by 8 or more. So when I'm looking at a total of 6, and in 6 games I have them favored by over a touchdown, it's an automatic play for me. So only one play, Arizona State over the total.
Yes, you, Chris?
I did not play anything in the Pac-12 yet. I'm probably going to play Colorado under, just because I don't think they are going to be very good this year. I did play a week 1 game involving Colorado. I laid 7.5 with TCU against Colorado, realizing at the time that I was solely doing it, knowing that this number was probably going to hit 9, 9.5, 10, and I think it's already up to 8.5. So that's the only thing I have played around the Pac-12. I've thought about playing UCLA to win the Pac-12 at around 8 or 9 to 1 or so. My thinking there is if you look at UCLA's schedule, they should be 5-0 when they host Utah. They get an idle week and then they go to Oregon. If they can get past that, you could be looking at a situation where the Bruins will certainly control its destiny to get to the Pac-12 championship game. And look, they scored 60-something points in USC last year, and should be better offensively than they were a year ago. So the other interesting bet that you could potentially make involves a long-term bet with Utah. I mean, maybe you want to bet them to win the national championship or reach the college football playoff. I think I saw at Westgate there was 60-1 to win it all. Do I think Utah can win it all? No, I don't. But I think if you talk to most people, it's Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia for 3 spots already. 1 spot is still there. And then if Utah happens to claim it and you're holding 60-1 to win it all, you might be able to get a couple of units back out of that. So, again, I think the Pac-12 will be something that I'll monitor game by game and probably hop it on something
Chris,
during the year.
TCU is 10 and 10.5, 10.5 at both Circa and Westgate already. So nice way to jump on that value early.
TCU is?
Yeah.
Wow, at Colorado. That is interesting. I can't like Colorado with that number. Just they're going to the mountains there. TCU, brand new coach. I don't know. I'll look at that.
You mean I can lay 7.5 and grab 10.5? What a wonderful world this is.
You're in a great situation, my man. So I'm just going to make this short and sweet. I took USC under 9.5 plus 120. It's not minus 110. Utah over 8.5 minus 125. It's at 9 minus 125 now. I mean, those were obvious to me. I made a couple like a month and a half, 2 months ago. I shouldn't have to, just the way Utah played in the Rose Bowl without some of their cornerbacks against Ohio State should tell you everything you need to know. My dark horse to win the Pac-12 is Oregon State at plus 4,000. Now it's down to plus 2,000 star night, and I took Utah to win the Pac-12 at plus 250. It's down to plus 240. I'm just fade USC and Oklahoma, even though they're kind of intertwined with the coaching movements. I just have to go under on both these teams. It's just too much uncertainty right now. So SEC. I only did Missouri under 5.5, and yeah, they have some easy games against LA Tech, Abilene Christian, and Vanderbilt, New Mexico State. That's 4 wins, but I cannot find 2 wins to bust my ticket after that. They have it extremely hard. They're going to be massive dogs in the rest of their games. It's the SEC. We shouldn't have to say anything more about that. I like the under 5.5. Chris, SEC.
Well, I have no problem. And Ralph talked about how a half a game is worth 45 cents or so. I laid the $2 with Georgia and Alabama to go over 10.5 wins. I think that the odds of one of those teams going 10-2 for either of those teams going 10-2 or slim. I think at worst there are 11-1, and that's why I had no problem laying the extra price to win on 11-1 as to lay a little bit less and push on 11. So I took over on Georgia, over on Alabama, and I also took over 6.5 on LSU. And I think most places have that number at 7 now. But 7, I would still consider playing it because while 7-5 is probably the most likely record for the Tigers, 8-4 is possible. And LSU did not have a talent problem the last couple of years. LSU had a culture problem where you had guys holding themselves out for the draft, injured players, Coach O and all the issues he was having off the field. It was just a kind of a drama and a soap opera. Regardless of what you think about Brian Kelly, he's going to go in there and offer some stability. And I like the hire for Brian Kelly. LSU is going to have better talent when it sets foot on the field in a lot of those middling SEC type games. And if you go back to Brian Kelly's last, I think it's like 45 games at Notre Dame or 40 games, like he was like 44-1 in games that he was favored. So like he wins when he's expected to win by the odds makers, they win. And I just have to trust that he'll continue that at LSU. You bring in Jaden Daniels, a transfer from Arizona State. They'll get some other guys back in the portal this year and some other guys healthy. Keyshawn Butte is obviously a great wide receiver, and the running game got going with Davis Price a couple times last year. So I'm a lot higher on LSU than I am a lot of other teams. So I have 3 overs in the SEC: Alabama, Georgia, and LSU.
All right, fair enough. Ralph?
Bama minus 145 to win the SEC. I agree with Chris. You know, for the people watching now, Bama's 10.5 is now 280, at some places. So people have continued to pound it. Talking about why, because sharps don't mind betting 200 when there's value, even at that point. I will point out this, Chris's LSU, for a team that goes 6-7, to have a top 12 recruiting class and pick up a number 3 set of transfers, they're number 7 overall. They brought in 15 transfers, including their quarterback, with a top 12 recruiting class. I think they have a lot of love there. I'm betting Vandy under 2.5. Vandy goes to Hawaii, and then they host Elon, and they may be 2-0, and you may be sweating 2.5 wins the rest of the way. But I have them a double-digit favorite and an average favorite of over 20 in those SEC games. So if they beat Hawaii, I will be sitting on it the rest of the year, sweating out 1 win, but I don't think I'm going to be sweating too much. So Bama to win the SEC minus 145 and Vandy under 2.5 wins.
All right.
Yeah,
So,
where is Vandy's SEC win coming? I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah,
who are they going to beat?
under 0.5 conference wins is what you got
I
to
have
find.
11.5 at home against South Carolina as the closest line game.
Missouri, maybe. I don't know. We'll see with Missouri. I don't know what you have for that.
They're on the road at Missouri. That's much different. I have them.
They are on the road. Okay.
In that game.
All right. Sun Belt. James Madison under 6.5 wins. I took at plus 100. It's now minus 160. James Madison was a great FCS team, but lost a ton of production. And now they're in the Sun Belt. They're not going to get a warm welcome from these teams. These teams, I don't care how bad you are in the Sun Belt, you're going to be gearing up to make you not look worse than this FCS team coming up. And they only play 11 games. 11 games this year. I will take the under 6.5. Ralph.
My favorite play, I bet Marshall at 5.5. I bet Marshall at 6. I bet Marshall at 6.5. And I still think there's value at Marshall at 7. Not as much value. I bet them plus 620 to win the conference. They're plus 550. I still think there's value. I think this team has an edge with people coming up to Marshall in the move to the division. I actually power rated them higher than App State, so they're my number 1 power rated team. They're DBs. They have 2 all-conference cornerbacks, and they have 2 transfers that were FCS quality transfers that started a combined 58 games in their careers. A powerful, powerful defense. I am Green Herd fan this year.
All right, Chris.
I took Arkansas State under 4.5 in here. I think you look at some of the games that they have on the road, and certainly in the non-conference will be difficult. I think this is a team that takes a step back. So I took under 4.5 on Arkansas State, and I also took over 5.5 on Southern Miss. I think Southern Miss is a team that last year had a lot of injury issues, notably at quarterback, and they were playing like basically Frank Gore's son is like a wildcat offense, and like I don't think that they're going to have as bad of a injury type luck as they did a year ago. I think they'll be better. I think obviously they go to Miami, but you got Liberty coming in, you got Northwestern State coming in to open, should be a good start. You get Arkansas State at home, you get South Alabama at home, you get Georgia State at home, you get Louisiana, who is in that division, who loses so much as well as their entire coaching staff. I think there's an opportunity for Southern Miss to get 6 wins and go to a bowl.
All right, no, fair enough. Let's move on to I got nothing for the independents, but Heisman Trophy, like I hinted before, and Brad Powers turned me on this show, Devin Leary to win the Heisman at 150 to 1. Now it's 50 to 1. I mean, you look in a situation just like you said, Ralph, you think this team could be a sleeper, going to get in the playoffs. I kind of agree with you there. He was 66% last year, 35 to 5 TD to interception ratio. That if they make the playoffs, Devin Leary is going to be at least in the conversation. They're making a trip, obviously, to New York there. So I like that play. And you can, of course, make your Bryce Young and your Stroud arguments, and I have no disagreements with that. Their numbers aren't good, but that's my thoughts. Chris, what do you think?
The only Heisman bet that I have made back in April, I got Will Anderson at 40 to 1 to win the Heisman Trophy. And I think last year he built up so much equity from college football fans, writers, Heisman voters, that he's going to be at a little bit of a jump, a little bit of a nudge forward in terms of where he starts this year. I think that people may not want to vote Bryce Young again, Heisman Trophy winner. Can Bryce Young approach the numbers that he had last year without all of those offensive weapons that he had, including Jamison Williams? You bring in Jahmyr Gibbs, so maybe the hint is he'll have a little bit more of a running game than this year. If Anderson has the type of year that he had last year, knowing that Aiden Hutchinson was runner-up last year in the Heisman voting, I think there's no reason why Anderson can't win the Heisman. And I think the other issue, too, is you look at Ohio State, a lot of people want to make C.J. Stroud the favorite. I think they're going to get a little bit of a split vote in Columbus, like the 2002 Miami team had all the split vote with Dorsey and McGahee and the guys there. You're going to get people who voted for Stroud. You're going to get people who may vote for Jackson Smith and Jigba. You may get people who are going to vote for Trayvon Henderson. I don't know if Stroud should be favored. Maybe ultimately he will be, but as a quarterback of maybe the most prolific offense in the country. But I think there's enough momentum and enough push out there from where we were last year with Will Anderson to have bet him at 40 to 1. And those numbers are long gone. I think he's right around 25 to 1 now.
Ralph?
Excuse me, I did not bet anyone on the Heisman. When I looked at it, taking a wide receiver, obviously is not one of the smartest things, but I would look at Addison. I think that you have a team that, people love USC, people love that offense getting back there, but not a bet I'd make. But if I had to throw a long shot into the mix, that would be mine.
Well, Chris bet Waddle 2 years ago, and Smith got it because Waddle got injured. So you have to remind Chris about that.
Dang, I appreciate that. You're such a good friend.
What's funny about Ohio State and Stroud? That's why I took Ohio State on May 1st and tweeted out 6 to 1 plus 600 to win the national championships. Let's face it, they're going to have an easier road than Alabama and Georgia. If you want to get cute, they're going to have an easier road than Oregon and USC and Oklahoma. I don't care. At 6 to 1, there was tons of value. Now that thing's down to 3 to 1, 3.5 to 1. Probably stay away at it, not right now. But this is why it's important to look at the situation early. Jim Knowles hopefully will change this defense around. Best wide receiving core in football, Smith and Jigba, Marvin Harrison Jr. So I had no problem making that play when I did, and there's some value there now. if I have to hedge it, I'll wait till the final game. You know, I think if they're the number 1 seed, they'll get the shitty number 4 seed, right? So that's the way I look
I'll
at
tell you
it.
what, the players at Ohio State, being from Cleveland, the players at Ohio State absolutely love Knowles. He's playing the 4-2-5. He's got a lot of things he's changing. He's playing music in practice in the meetings, and the players are just, you see all the fun the Detroit Lions are having. That's the type of defensive effort that the Buckeyes are having so far this spring. So pay attention to them against that Notre Dame game. They may have to be, they've always had the talent. You look at the defensive linemen that have gotten drafted and the cornerbacks. The talent's there for Ohio State to be an elite defense.
All right, fair enough. And Chris, did you make a bet on that?
On which one? Oh, national championship?
Playoffs or national championship?
Yes, I made one bet and two bets kind of, but they're really the same bet. I laid the 340 on the Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia versus the field because I can't make a case for any team out there to beat another one of those two teams twice. That's basically what you're gonna need a team to get at 4, and we beat one of those teams in the semi and the other team in the championship game. And I don't think right now there is a team out there who I can see doing that. And I also played. I parlayed to. You can do this at DraftKings. I discovered, and it came out to like -125. I parlayed Alabama to win the SEC West, Georgia to win the SEC East, and Ohio State to win the Big Ten East, and that came out to -125. So kind of the same big three, and that's where we are in college football. So again, sometimes you don't need to overthink things and get really cute when the obvious. It's like Occam's razor. Like sometimes the answer is the most logical conclusion, and that's where we are with college football. So if I can do it, I'm gonna try and take advantage of an opportunity where the most logical possible outcome, most logical possible conclusion to be reached is hopefully a winning one.
Heavy Chalk Chris. That's where we got here.
That's
Heavy
me.
Chalk Chris coming on in. Hilarious, man. And before we go, I just want to say that I don't understand the -2 Utah at Florida. I took it. It's -2.5, -120 right now. It just makes no sense to me with everybody. It stinks in a way. This line kind of smells, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if it smells in the right way, which you would be on Florida. But no, I took Utah because I couldn't figure out any fathom possible way. What's their home field advantage? 10 points? I mean, I took Utah, and it's moving in my direction, but do I buy back if it gets past the 3 is a question because I'm missing something. What am I missing here, Chris?
I think you're looking at maybe some, as we talked about, Utah is a very hot, trendy, public-ish team to get to the playoff potentially. I think what you need to realize as well, though, I mean, Utah going to Gainesville, Florida in early September, where it's going to be 100 degrees, probably plus with the heat index. Can the Utes stand up to that? Can they defend Anthony Richardson in whatever Billy Napier and that team has to offer week 1? I would think it's going to be a pretty one-sided ticket count and money count on this game. I think the world is going to be on Utah. So if this thing hits 3, Kiev, I would be a little bit tempted to have a little bit of a buyback.
Yeah. It's a smelly line. And I just think it's because of an SEC bias, but you have a new coach. I know Richardson, they call him big, like possible Cam Newton type, but this is brand new for them. It doesn't make sense to me, but Utah away from home is different than Utah at home. So I'm going to keep that in mind when it gets to 3, and hell, maybe that money will push it over the threshold and I can have a fat 3. So that'd be nice. Ralph.
I do remember a couple years ago was one of my biggest bets of the year. You had Boise State with a rookie quarterback going into Florida State with the heat and humidity. And oh my God, I was all over Florida State in that one. And then the game got moved to Tallahassee because of the hurricane. And what happened? Welcome to the world, Brockmeyer.
I remember. You're right. The only other, I took a week 0 play Wyoming +10 because how the hell are you going to lay 10 points with Brett Bielema at Illinois? And it's not going to be a pretty game. And Wyoming's just Wyoming. They're -6 in my power ratings, right? And they're always going to be -6 in my power ratings or something, 6 points below the average. It's just, that's what they are, and yeah, I don't have Illinois much higher than that. So I don't know how the heck Illinois is getting all this love to be laying 10 points here, but that's another one that I took on week 0. Any other plays, guys?
I have 1 week 0. I'm going to say this as well. Bet it on the money line. New Mexico State +10 to beat Nevada. We already talked about the Wolfpack. What Jerry Kill did his first year as Northern Illinois. I'm not a New Mexico State fan. Obviously, they've been treacherous, but I do respect the hell out of that coach. And I think this is the time to grab value. And I actually did bet some on the money line as well when they were +11.5. I still think it's double digits. You're getting value.
I'll write that down. Chris?
I laid 4.5 with Houston against UTSA. We hit on UTSA earlier. We know how much we loved them last year, but again, they had a great record in close games. They lose a bunch of guys, including their best running back, Sincere McCormick. I don't know how much of a home field edge they're going to get in this game. I think Houston's defensive line will be the story of the game. So I laid 4.5 with Houston against UTSA, in addition to the TC number that's long gone.
All right. Well, love that, man. Great stuff, guys. Really appreciate it. We covered everything we could. Can't wait to reconvene about some of these plays and some of the things that we might owe each other a little bit later in the season. So that's going to be fun. Where can our listeners find your great information, Ralph, and all the plays that you release over at Wager Talk?
WagerTalk.com. The shortcut is WT.buzz/RM. I still have an NFL preseason guide, an NFL schedule guide, and my college football schedule guide up there. And I'm excited. I'll be doing start charts this year for college football. I haven't been able to find them anywhere. We'll be able to see the continuity of offensive and defensive lines, and that'll be WagerTalk.com.
Chris, when's your articles coming out?
Sanford, Steve, and I will have a podcast weekly now on Wednesday out. We'll have our ESPN Chalk columns out every Thursday starting with the regular season. Daily Wager, you know where to find me, and on Twitter as well. So no shortage of ways to reach out and get in touch and pick my brain if you need to.
Yeah, pick Chris's brain. Get his recipes as well. That was delicious. That cheese ball, man. I absolutely loved it. Thanks again, guys, for coming on. Make sure you guys check out Chris and Ralph Michaels.